making a casserole cozy in preparation for holiday season and potlucks all year long. As you can see here, my finished cozy fits an 11 cup casserole dish, and so if you want to make a modification for a different size, we encourage you to make adjustments to this tutorial. But this is a great project for beginner sewists. And so what you will need for this project is some stick-on Velcro, as you can see here. We also used about 1 yard of medium width batting, about 2 yards of a cotton or similar blend fabric, matching thread, a sewing machine with a needle, a hand sewing needle, a couple of pins, and our iron and ironing board. So get those materials together and we will show you how to make this neat little carrier for your casserole dish. And as you can see here, it makes your casserole ready to pull out of the oven and onto your potluck in no time. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll get started. Okay. So I'm starting out with my pieces cut out and ready to go. If you need any more instruction on how to use a PDF pattern, please see our Essential Skills video for pattern reading. So I have my two pieces of fabric and my 1 piece of batting, all in the same shape. And this is going to come together in an envelope style cozy for my casserole dish. So I have this sized for an 11 cup or 2.6 liter dish, and it's going to fold like this and then Velcro like that. And so you can use this sort of design for any size casserole. You'll just have to adjust it to fit your dish. This is also the sort of thick kind, so I had to account for that with my sizing. So the first thing that we're going to do is take our pieces, which have been pre-washed and ironed prior to cutting out. That's always an important step. And we're going to put those right sides together, so like this, so that our underside of our fabric is showing now. So line those up, and then we're going to lay our batting on top of that. So just being careful to line it up on all the sides. You have to kind of wiggle the batting so that it sits like you want it to. But after you've got that right, we're going to start to pin. And so to make sure that our batting doesn't shift or do anything weird while we're pinning it together, I'm actually going to lay it like this. I think that'll be a little bit easier. There we go. We're going to start by pinning our corners, and then we're going to pin our sides. So we'll pin this corner, and this corner. That way it doesn't get pulled in any one direction. This is a great time to use wonder clips, so if you have those in your sewing supplies, this is a great use for those. You would just clip them like binder clips almost. They're great for using with projects that require batting. But you can see I'm just using regular straight pins here, and it works fine. So just making sure you grab all 3 pieces. Okay, and then I'm going to go and put pins in between each corner so that I make sure that I don't have it too bunched up in any one of these directions. then the other thing I'm going to keep in mind is as I sew this together here in a minute, I'm going to leave one side open so that I can turn it right side out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose one of the longer sides. So this is not quite equal lengths. So we have 2 short sides and then 4 longer sides. And so I'm going to choose one of my longer sides to be where I'm going to turn it right side out. So I'm going to stitch all the way around except for this one side. And so to make sure I don't go past where I want to stop, I'll start on this corner and go all the way around. I'm going to make myself a little X with my pins over here. So there's going to be 2 pins, and that'll remind me to stop there. And so as you can see, batting has a kind of looser, fluffier side and then a more tightly bound side. I put the more tightly bound side on the top just so it will be easier to sew here in just a minute. So now I'm going to set up my sewing machine, and we're going to stitch all the way around using a 5/8 inch seam allowance, just like you normally would for most craft projects. And I'll show you what to do next. So to help myself turn corners, I'm going to tell my sewing machine to put its needle down so that when it stops, it'll stop down. When I'm doing my corners, I want to make sure that when I turn my side to do the next side, that I leave myself that 5/8 allowance. So what I'm going to do to get started is to adjust for that. So I'm going to put it where I think it should go for my 5/8 allowance, and then I'm just going to check and be sure that I gave myself enough room. And just check that your fabric pieces on the underneath part are lined up right as you go. So as you can see, I've pinned that so that it'll be nice and secure. Feel free to use as many pins as you need to, but just stitch slowly and be mindful of that as you go, and it should work out nicely. So just lining up everything right. I'm going to put my needle down just to check and make sure that I'm happy with my placement here, and that looks good. So remembering when we start out, we want to back stitch to tie off our thread securely, and we're ready to start sewing. So again, just watching as you go, making sure everything's lining up. As I get towards my corner here, I want to be careful not to go too far because I need to leave myself a 5/8 inch seam allowance to go the next direction. So it's okay to kind of take it easy as you get towards this corner here. Even turn it with your hand wheel if you need to. And as I get closer, I'm not quite there yet. So I'm going to keep going. Okay, let's check again. And I need one more stitch. So I'm actually going to turn it once with my hand wheel. And now I should be where I want to be for my next side. So So again, I'm just going to keep going all the way around till I get to my double pin corner where I want to be sure I stop. And I'm coming up on my X here. It's a little bit hard to see in this light, but this is where my 2 pins are to remind me to stop here. So I won't do my last side once I get to this corner. But do remember to back stitch here so that you tie off your threads and make sure they're nice and secure. And now I've gone all the way around, and I will show you what to do on the next step. So as you can see, we have sewn all the way around except for one side, and we will use that to turn this right side out. So we were looking at the batting side while we were stitching just to make sure we were catching that batting as we go. We don't want to drive off the road with that. But this is what it's going to look like on your fabric side. And so as you can see, we have a nice seam allowance all the way around. To take some bulk out of that seam allowance though, we need to trim our batting a little bit. So what we're going to do is take our scissors and just cut the fluff away from the stitch line there. So cut it as close as you can without compromising your stitches. So I'm just going to start on one side. This is the side I have not sewn yet, so that's going to be used to turn it right side out in just a second. But I'm going to trim my extra fluff from right here. So again, just being careful not to cut my stitches. So I have my scissors here. Just going to carefully trim that extra fluff away. And as you can see, if I turn it right side out, I'm not cutting over my stitch line, so I'm just carefully trimming as I go. Just checking my work, making sure that I'm not getting too close to my stitch line there. And so I'm going to just do that all the way around all the sides here. So I've gone all the way around, and you can see how much it helps take the bulk out of the seam here. So the last thing I'm going to do here with my batting is to trim a little bit of bulk away from the side I haven't stitched yet, because we're going to have the same trouble on the finished side there. So again, just a little bit, maybe about a 1/2 inch or so, maybe even less. We're just going to take our scissors and carefully just trim a little bit of bulk away so it more or less matches the sides we have sewn already. And you can see here that leaves a little bit of an allowance here. So if you have any extra little fuzzies poking out, it's okay to shape those up too. And that'll make it easier for us to close that seam in just a minute. And then what we're going to go do is go around and just snip the corners. And so that is so that we have nice sharp corners when we turn this right side out. Again, not disrupting our stitch line at all. We're just snipping any bulk away from those corners. That'll make it easier to turn here in just a minute. All right. And so now we're ready to turn this right side out. So now we're going to turn this right side out so that our batting is in the middle like a sandwich. And so we're going to open it up so that our right sides together will show. So we're just going to tuck it in there. It's going to take a little bit of wiggling to get it right side out, but gently tug. And this is where you're going to see the value of trimming those edges and corners. So use your finger and kind of poke out each corner as you turn it. That'll help it get into its right shape. So I have my index finger in this little corner here. That helps it just sort of come to a point like that. And we've gone all the way around. And so as you can see, we're starting to have a little bit of a flat shape now. All right. And so what we have to do next to assemble this part is we're going to close this open side where we just turned it right side out. And we're going to do that by hand sewing, somewhat like we would a pillow or something like that, so that our stitches don't show. Because as you can see, we have our seam on the inside. Our stitches don't show that way, and that's a really nice look. It's nice and finished. So we want our last side to be finished just the same. So now I'm going to show you how to hand sew that part. Before I begin sewing this together, I'm going to pin it like I'm going to have my stitch, just so that I have everything lined up like I want and make sure I have a nice straight line here. So I'm going to fold both the top and bottom pieces of fabric like I want them to be when they're sewn together. And so as you can see, I have it folded so that I have neither raw edge showing. And so I'm going to just pin this so I can make sure that I have it even all the way down before I get sewing. So again, I'm just going to tuck and pin. And this is a nice way to do it, because then if you need to go and adjust it, you can. It's a little bit harder to wing this without pinning it first when you want it nice and even. And this is why we trimmed our batting a little bit on the end here, so we'd have some wiggle room to fold our fabric under like this. If you find that you didn't trim it enough, feel free to trim it a little bit more. It's better to have to trim more later than realize you trimmed too much in the first place. And be sure that you tuck it all the way to the very corner too, so that you don't have a raw edge poking out on your corner. Okay, now let's see how it looks on each side. So if we flip it over and it looks kind of bunchy, it's okay to kind of take your pin out and readjust. I didn't quite get that right in that spot. I'm just gonna readjust it. So this is why it's good to pin, because then you can kind of work with it until it looks right. I'm not totally satisfied with how that looks, so I'm just gonna repin those two. So you can see here where I had it kind of bunched, so that's why I'm adjusting it a little bit so that it'll lie nice and flat, like this. We want it to give us a nice seam when we're finished there. Again, just adjusting as you need to, making sure that you're happy with how it looks on both sides before you start sewing. And again, I'm making sure that I have tucked all the way to the corner here so that I don't have any raw pieces sticking out, and no holes where I could have any batting poke through either. Okay. Alright, so it looks good on both sides, and I'm ready to start sewing. So for this, we're going to use a ladder stitch, which is a type of blind hemming stitch, and that is going to allow us to connect both pieces together where our thread will be invisible. And so I've already threaded my needle and made a knot, and so I'm going to begin by taking out the first pin so that I can get started. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing a little bit more detailed. So I'm going to begin by sending my needle up through that little ridge like this, so that my knot will be on the underside of my fabric like this. Hopefully you can see that kind of coming out of this little ridge right here. So I'll hold it together like I had it pinned. And what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to put my needle through this little tunnel here. And it'll come out like that. And then I'm going to go directly across from that to the other side here and do the same thing. And that makes a parallel stitch like that. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'm just going to do the same thing over here again. Go up a little ways again. Go directly across and do that over here. And you can see it's starting to form what looks like the rungs on a ladder here. So as I start to get it pulled together like this, when I pull, you'll see how those stitches disappear, and I have what looks like an invisible stitch. And so I'm going to do that all the way down. Let's zoom in even more so you can see how you can't even see those stitches unless I pull it apart so you can see them. And so that'll be a nice finished look on this edge, and I'm going to go all the way down this edge using that stitch. So as you can see, I have gone all the way from this corner where I started all the way down, and we have a nice closed seam here. So I'm just going to show you how to finish it off on these last couple of stitches. So as you can see here, I've got the last little stretch here to do. So I'm just going to continue like I've been doing with my ladders. A little bit further here. making sure I've tucked in my edges and pulling them tight as I go so that they're coming together. And as I get to my corner here, I'm going to be ready to tie it off. So I'm going to go one more stitch and then I'm going to start knotting everything. Alright, so I make sure I've pulled everything taut and it's all nice and closed, which it is. So now I'm going to go across and catch a little piece of fabric like I've been doing. So this time I'm going to run my needle through my loop that I made here to tie it off. So I'm going to pull that knot all the way, and then I'm going to do that same exact thing again just to reinforce it. So again, I'll catch the loop like that. I'll gently pull, and then I always like to go back in so I pull the knot through and it's going to be in the middle here. So send your needle into your project here and just out the other side, and as you can see, our thread doesn't show there, it just kind of goes into the middle, and then you can snip that and that knot will just be right there in the middle. So now we have our completed closed piece here, and we're ready to place our Velcro so that it will be a nice cozy for our casserole dish. And so our last step here is to put our Velcro so that when we fold it, we can attach it so that it'll stay folded while we have our dish in transport. So we're going to just fold it over like we would have it there. And what I'm going to do while I figure out where I want to position my Velcro is to fold it like I would use it. And I'm going to throw a pin in there just to keep it while I'm getting the other side sorted out. So about there, and then about here. And then that just marks it for me where I had it. I'm going to do the same thing here where I kind of fold it like I would want it to sit. And again, I'm going to just put my pin in it kind of where I decide it's helpful to mark. It's not actually going to hold it, it's just going to show us where it connected well. So I'm going to compare where I put my pins on each side just to make sure they're in about the same place. This is the point where you want to wiggle it around if your pin ended up somewhere not quite even with the other side, because that's how we're going to judge where to put our stick-on Velcro. So essentially I'm going to put a strip here and here, and then another one here and here, so that when I fold them they hold still. So I've cut my pieces. These are my Velcro strips, and I have the soft side and the rough side. So basically I want all of my soft side pieces to sit on this long side, and then I want all of my rough side pieces to sit on the underside of the triangle. So what I'm going to do first is place my soft side pieces, and this is stick-on Velcro. You are welcome to use the sew-on kind if you're joining us from home and you prefer that. This is just for ease of application that we're going to use the easier kind, which is the stick-on one. So I'm going to take the backing off and give it a good stick, and then I'm going to take it apart on another piece that I've cut, again using the soft piece of the Velcro the loop part, and I'm going to stick it right here to match the side that I just did. So that's where those are going to sit, and then I'm going to fold this just the same and do them the same way. So again, setting aside my rough piece, take the sticker backing off, and just like we did on this side, we're going to do it like that here. So they're going to be about the same. And again, just giving it a good press, making sure it sticks well. And then we do it here to match. Okay, so when we check our work, we see that we have attachment points on all 4 corners there. And so now our job is to fold our triangles over so that they will match up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to attach our loop first like this, and I'm going to do it on these 2 corners first so that I work out this triangle, and then I'll do it on the other side. And so I'm going to place it so that my Velcro pieces line up, and then I'm going to take the backing off like this. And then I'm going to carefully fold my triangle over, making sure it's going to completely cover the Velcro. It's very sticky, so be careful as you work. Take our pins out. We don't want those stuck. Those are just for guides. And then we're going to make sure we cover it really well. And we're going to stick it on there like that. And then we'll do the same on the other side. Give them a really good stick so that when we see it's going to be nice and secure. So now, the last step is to do that for the other side. So we're going to stick our rough pieces on each side like that. We'll take off the sticky cover part. And now we're ready to do the same thing that we did with our other triangle. So again, we had our pins in there just to kind of help us figure out where to put it. We're done with those now. And so again, we're going to fold over our triangle. And this is the tricky part here. So we want to make sure it's covering our spots, which it does on that side, and then we do the same on the bottom. And after we get it, we give it a good smush, making sure it's stuck on there really well, and make sure it's stuck on there really well. And there you go. Our casserole carrier is ready to go for our next holiday and potluck events. All we have to do is carefully pull our Velcro apart. Again, the first couple times you use this, just be gentle with how you do it to make sure it's stuck onto your fabric really well. But there we go. If we test it out, giving it a good press as we pull it apart to make sure it's going to stick well. And one more good press, and there we have it. So the next time we go to use it, we will take our casserole, we'll set it right in the middle, we'll fold, fold, and then place with our Velcro, and then place with our Velcro. And there we go, ready for the road. Thanks for joining us today, and we hope that you found this to be a useful tutorial.